Pankaj, everything in life is not like this. Some things in life are like this, and maybe it can be like this also. Sir, please do not try to teach us something which you have not experienced at all. No one should definitely know what one is trying to get into. I always tell the freshers that the option to get hired is yours, but the option to hire is the person on the other side of the desk.
Hi, I'm Raghu Kiran. Welcome to Future of Our People. It's a podcast series dedicated to leaders who are shaping the future of work. Today's guest leads one of the most dynamic people engines in the global tech space. At the heart of Coforge's 32,000 plus strong workforce is a culture shaped by purpose, performance, and people. And the man helping driving that culture is none other than Mr. Pankaj Khanna, the Chief People Officer. With over 3 decades in leadership roles across organizations like Wipro, Mindtree, and Fidelity, Pankaj brings a rare mix of strategic clarity and human-centered leadership. He's just not building teams, he's shaping the future of work at scale. He's a chemical engineer turned HR guru, proving that you can turn lead into gold, or at least turn complex human dynamics into organization success. So let's dive into world of people, culture, and the heart of making a workplace not just great, but exceptional with a man who makes it all happen. Pankaj, it's great to have you with us.
Thank you, Raghu. You have been very kind in the introduction. Good to be around. Good to share some thoughts and ideas, Raghu.
Thank you, Pankaj. In fact, I have been especially curious about your journey. If I may, I wanted to reflect and take you back 30 years back, when you all started. I believe you graduated as chemical engineer, if I'm right.
You are right.
Then you did your MBA, then you got into HR. So I'm very curious, what inspired you to pursue a career in human resources, and what shaped you as a person and the person you are today, to be honest, Pankaj?
Yeah, I keep on getting that question asked a lot of times, and I think I have always the same answer, because it is indeed true. One, that I did chemical engineering at the time, 3 decades back, when doing an engineering or a doctor was the only thing which most of us knew, right? So we got into engineering. I wanted to do chemical engineering because I thought that I would be in big fancy plants. That point of time, the only so-called global or international exposure was reading through books. And then you used to have these so-called fancy plants of some of the big, organizations in the world. So I said, that is what I should be doing. Then in my 4th year of chemical engineering in India, I went to some of the plants in India. And I really was heartbroken with my dream that this is not looking like the so-called, the fancy factories I saw, because, India about 3.5, 4 decades was in a was more or less, in the semi urban to rural kind of areas in factories, right? So people, it was never in the heart of the, let's say, the 7 or 8 towns or cities, what you call in India. So I said, no, I need to, do something else. I always had a passion for doing something, let's say, external focus. And I thought in my mind that I should be looking at either sales or human resources. And when I got the option to, and I got the selection from Tata Institute, which is one of the premier most in India, it didn't take me too long to say yes to. And interestingly, Raghu, there is again another thought process since you asked this, and I'm now remembering it. So when I did my chemical, then I did my MBA in HR, then I had this another dream that, well, now I know chemical engineering, I know how to work in big plants. Now I also know HR. So, well, I'm somebody unique. So I will like to now try my hand going into the same set of chemical factories or chemical organizations in wherever it is. And that's what I actually did. I joined a plant. I actually joined a conglomerate in Bombay. And they had a setup in Durgapur, which was in near Calcutta in Bengal. So I went there for the first 1 year of my life. I was there, but that is that's the thought I had, that I have an engineering, I have an MBA, HR, etc. And then that time there was no HR was really a nice pseudonym, but it was all about interacting with the workforce, the blue collared workforce, the workers, if I can put it, in the trenches. So it was called IR that time, industrial relations. So, but yeah, that's the thought process. That's the journey, Raghu, of engineering MBA, and then where I started from.
That's quite interesting, Pankaj. And you talked about either being in sales or HR. Do you have any regrets not being in sales?
No, I don't really, honestly, at all, because to me, I think HR over the last, at least in the last couple of decades, I think HR is really a sales led thought process function, whether it is hiring, whether it is retaining, and whether it is convincing employees that what you are doing is good. In a way, is nothing else but an expounding of whatever the sales fundamentals are. So I have never regretted it, Raghu, no? Never at all.
No, that's quite interesting. Again, Pankaj, it's your journey shows such a powerful reminders, right? That career path don't have to be linear to be meaningful, right? And your journey clearly shows how purpose can guide transformation,
Mhm.
right? And speaking of purpose, Pankaj, you have constantly driven transformation and scale across organizations, right? From your vantage standpoint, what's the deeper why that fuels your leadership journey?
I think I can only say one word, and that is excitement, and maybe a sense of satisfaction. But I would say satisfaction may be the outcome, which is dependent upon an output of what you do. But it is just the sheer excitement of doing things on a scale, whether it is whether it's locational specific, or whether it is geo or global.
Mm.
It is just the sheer excitement of doing something unknown, Raghu, maybe, if I can put it that way. Because whatever it is, there are certain fundamentals in place, there are certain things which guide you, like you said, the purpose, right? And I would say that I have always thought about two things when I look at a purpose. One is that one should definitely know what one is trying to get into. That means that one should not be looking at guiding people without understanding what that guidance is going to lead towards. That's number one, because the purpose should also be definitively linked to a vision and an output statement. So that is one. Second thing is, it's also doing or executing things on scale, and executing things which are maybe unknown, involving a lot of stakeholders, a lot of people who are really not necessarily in your power of influence or circle of influence. So that is what is an excitement for me, Raghu, when I look at some of the journeys I've done. And you are right, I mean, I have been and since you mentioned two or three organizations where I was, but in between a Wipro and a Fidelity, I actually had a 4-year stint, which was about quasi sales in a e-commerce startup, which I was very passionate about that time. But like many dreams at that point of time, the dot-com boom went to bust very, very quickly. And then I moved back again into corporate in terms of it. But again, in the last maybe 2 decades, I have moved out from being a HR guy to a salesy guy, to back again to a talent acquisition, to engagement, and then to what I call it as operational metrics function called a revenue assurance, which one set up both in the earlier organization and in Coforge. So yes, it's been excitement from an angle that it is something which is unknown, and something which is keeps me satisfied post the thing that we have been able to do things on scale.
Now, that's interesting, Pankaj. In fact, I would love to understand this revenue assurance. I've not never come across this term before,
Yeah, I
especially
know.
in the HR field. And that made
Yeah.
me think as well, what exactly is revenue assurance? How would HR? Because for me, I mean, that curiosity has led me to interest. Wow, this is something, because every organization, every functional unit want to contribute, right? They wanted to contribute certain business outcomes, right? We are a business enabler, right? So if that's okay, I know I wanted to touch base because I found it very interesting, this about
Uh,
revenue assurance. What exactly that means, Pankaj?
Yeah, so like a lot of people who meet me, I mean, it was a good opener for a discussion because that's a designation I used to carry before I stepped into as the head of the people function here. So revenue assurance is a terminology picked up from the telecom sector, and the idea was that you make the, let's say, the prepaid numbers, right, and then you have to get the monies out. So that's how the terminology came out of. We created this as a function in my earlier organization when I went and joined, and what we thought, the intent was twofold. One was that one should know the talent acquisition as well as the talent deployment end-to-end cycle, in terms of how many come in, how many can be billed, or revenue generating, as we call it in the IT services industry. How much do we keep as a slack? I mean, there is a terminology called bench in the IT industry. So, and it's unfortunate, it's a negative thing, but I think it's really the heart of the growth engine of any firm, that you keep a very conscious, skilled, available number of people on bench. And then it has its own repercussions in terms of, let's say, the utilization, the cost, what kind of a the forecasting can one give to an organization. So these are the so-called operational metrics, which actually, if bubbled up right, if spoken about right, presented inside the organizational fabric right, can really impact in terms of the the both the revenues and the productivity and the and the profits of the organization. That is how the revenue assurance came. But I say it in a simpler language, that it is all about a talent life cycle, right from hiring, how many, where, what skill, and then to deploy them, and so that they are gainfully deployed, and we make the use of them. So that is the so-called revenue assurance. And now, as a part of the people function, if you look at it, so you have you have this function, and then you have the so-called HR engagement, the talent management from a training angle. So it makes a very nice employee connect. So in a way, the people function here in Coforge now, if I look at both the segments, it's all about the employee touch point, employee life cycle end to end.
No, this is brilliant, Pankaj, and I'm sure for our viewers as well. It's a great way of looking things, right? Rather than keeping it standard, using those terminologies, but the way you positioned it in a way, because it is directly linked to the outcomes as well, right? Revenue
You're
assurance.
right.
Okay, really loved it. Um, Going back to that, I really wanted to touch again on your leadership standpoint, because I speak to many leaders. Pankaj, I always ask this question. In fact, it's one of my favorite questions as well, because I know every um, kind of leadership journey, right, as its defining tests. I mean, those moments where the plan falls apart, but the leader steps forward. These are not just the challenges, but they are more of a character shaping, right? Can you take us to that defining moment, or one such moment where a time where things got tough for you professionally, and share how that experience has reshaped you as a leader?
Sure, I'll actually give you maybe mm, two incidents or two what happened. One was, and I mentioned to it in the start, that I was in a place called Durgapur, which was in Bengal, and it was, uh, I mean, it was a chemical plant where I have this fun question, that the rubber tire, the passenger vehicle tire, right? It becomes black because of something which goes inside the rubber. And if you remember, the rubber, when it comes out from the trees, it's white in color,
Yes.
but then it has to become black. So that black, making that black and making that particular thing, is what the plant I was in, and we are talking about 3.5 decades back. So when you enter the plant, you will go the way we are. When you come out in the evening, your own children and parents will not recognize you, because you are all covered from top to bottom in the black suit. And of course, I jokingly say that we used to give free towels and free soaps at that point of time to everybody, including all the blue collar and white collared workforce. So operating in that thingy, had its own challenges, and there were sets of people, sets of workforce which used to do graded work. And these are, again, like I said, going back 30, 40 years, when the work was, unfortunately defined in very, very graded, very definitive inputs. So the reason I give this story, and the thing was that, one of the days, and I'm out from, like I said, MBA college, thinking that, I'm going to make miracles happen. And I go there and I tried giving some advice to, one of the workers who was working in the, and obviously they were not very well educated. So I thought he gave me the most important learning of my life, that, sir, please do not try to teach us something which you have not experienced at all. If you do not know that one day of my life from morning to night, and then it doesn't end there, because I'm working so much from there morning to night in that black suit, and there were hardly any protective gears that time. Come to my house and see what happens to me in the house in the evening before I recover to talk normally to my family. And I did that after that, Raghu. And I got involved so much that I went to all the, the colonies of the workers, not because I found a overnight love. I think it touched me so much because of the fact that I realized that, I'm giving a piece of advice which has no basis, right? And the basis is all in my learnings, in, my kind of a, setting, in terms of city setting. And I learned it very clearly, because I thought that particular piece made me the way I am, that not to get into any kind of advisory. I mean, as leaders, sometimes, Raghu, we do tend to get into that, right? And it is but natural. People look up to you, because decision making, unfortunately, is not such a common art overall. So, but having said so, now I mean, as I've looked at the last 3.5 decades, I have stayed hopefully, and I think consciously, fair to that statement, that, I will never get into something as a fulsome advisory unless I know some detail. And if I don't know, obviously we can't know everything, but then to have some detail on that. So that is one. And the second piece of my learning came about a decade back, and it was a very interesting moment of my life. You said the word tough, and I'm using the word tough here in terms of, the tough from a professional angle. I was slightly disappointed at one point of time in this thing, that, I mean, as is natural, that, well, I should have got that opportunity. Now, that opportunity didn't have anything to do with going up or whatever, but it was what you're looking forward to, but it was a level, let's say, higher in the so-called visible hierarchy of the organization. And I didn't get it. And there was this lady whom I used to look up to, and she was in her late 60s. She had come from the US, and she was a very effective, I would say, trainer, as well as I would say, counselor, if I can put it that way. So she told me one thing that day. I mean, and I remember it's fresh in my mind even today, because I use that as an example to all my employees who come cribbing to me, that, Pankaj, everything in life is not like this. Some things in life are like this, and maybe it can be like this also. Now you have to decide that this and this does not mean that you have to take a decision to decide doing something impromptu. Because, and I think that was a great learning, because in a setting from a cultural milieu, and especially in India, we always have looked at this as a growth. We have never looked at this as a growth unless it is told to employees that I am doing this with you so that you can go up, right? So she did that very nicely, and I remember that it stuck with me. It stays with me, and I now I'm a great believer of that everything in life is not about going up. It is not about having a one level up. Sometimes the best experiences, if you believe in it, can happen even if it's a lateral movement. And I think that is something which has stayed with me, Raghu. Thank you for asking. It is relived some of my memories, I could say.
I mean, to be honest, Pankaj, this is golden nuggets. I mean, we are living in a VUCA environment, right? Where there's so much of uncertainty, even at the employee level, right? In terms of uh, what's going to happen. It's nothing in, there are certain things which as a
Mm,
leader we have in a control. There are certain macroeconomic indicators which not in our control, but still, these examples, what you shared, especially it doesn't has to be again linear. You have to don't have to grow, but you have to look at cross functional, look at those experiences that can help you to become better
Yeah.
person, right? And I often get that advice, and in fact it I can relate personally as well. I all like everyone else, I was always thinking, but as you rightly said, I mean, if you got a good sales experience, going to marketing, get some experience, or you can get an opportunity into
Mm.
pricing, or do whatever you can. But these are the experiences will shape the person to become a better person and start putting that into action so you can start having things. So that piece of nugget, what you shared, those examples are so lively. And again, I really loved your that don't get into full to advisory role, because if you really wanted to build that authenticity, right, with your employees, that trust, you need to be knowing what you're talking.
Absolutely.
And again, it's a great reminder, Pankaj, what you shared. Really loved it. Uh,
And if I can add, Raghu, with your permission, the I that advisory of that fulsome advice, which is there, which I used, it is no, far away from wherever we are in today's life, because our, at least my children, the generation and the current this thing, they have no problems in giving it back to you in your face when they believe that they are right and you are not. So in a way, I keep on saying that it is like, reflecting back, I look at the workforce today, and I obviously have a workforce which is, as we know, the Gen Zs, the millennials, and everything else. I mean, it's so fascinating dealing with them because they have no set definitions of respect, hierarchy, or whatever, which was very common earlier. So what happens is, when you hear something in your face, I go back and say that yes, what I was told 3.5 decades back, remember that and just answer those questions. So that's how it is.
no, that's you made a great example there as well. But again, it goes back to certain values as well, right? I mean, the real test of a leadership often lies in a quiet moments, Pankaj, as you know, right? How you respond when no one's watching you, and how you treat people when there's nothing to gain. And that's where values come to life, right? So, what values do you hold that is very near to you when you comes to leading teams? And especially, you made an example of now you have to deal with a diverse array of Gen Zs, millennials, and so forth. And how
Sure.
do you ensure these values are not just posters on the wall to begin with,
You're right.
but part of your kind of your team operates daily?
So I guess it goes without saying that maybe integrity is the bulwark, or the, is a non-negotiable. But again, it depends in terms of, how you define integrity. Mm, it's a personal choice, and there is no recommendations on this. Whatever we believe is an integrity factor, I think one should look at it and define it. In my case, I always keep on saying that, we deal with so many external factors, so many external, let's say, transactional factors. So one has to be aligned to it in terms of what you can do, what you can't do. So that is part number one. But more importantly, if I look at it, building the teams, what is valuable, I would say maybe two or three things. One is that my belief is that, a team which laughs together stays together. I mean, we have heard the other thing saying that, a family which eats together stays together. I think it is, in my opinion, it is a team factoring, where I say that a team which laughs together stays together. And I mean by this, ability to laugh at one own self, and ability to obviously take in jokes, take in anything as a thing, and then obviously look at what the output and outcomes can, you know every day is not going to be a fun day, every day is not going to be a successful day. So, but ability to come back, acknowledge that, well, something has not gone well, sometimes you made a mistake, and then you laugh over it. But it's important that a team feels, I would say, safe to laugh, because sometimes, people have this thought process that I shouldn't laugh out loudly, etc. Incidentally, people in my team crib that whenever I'm around in whichever office, my loud guffaws can be heard on all the corners of the thing. I said, yeah, it is not I don't do it by practice this thing. It is just that's the way I am, because I do believe that it is important to, to be your own self in terms of what you do. So that's part number one. I think part number two is that we know team requires empathy, sympathy, growth, and you give whatever it is. I think the team has to believe that they are becoming better in whatever they are doing, and it is not they will obviously get the non-verbal cues, they will get the things in terms of the softer elements, but I think it is important that the leader shares very crystal clear as to what we want to be, what is going to be the output. I give this example again, Raghu, that see, if you are in a crime ridden society and where mafia is the, let's say, the ruler, if you tell that guy that what is success for you, success for mafia guys is that, well, if I kill 5 people today, it's a success, right? Now it is something which they will get rewarded for, but you have to decide. So there has to be an output, there has to be something which people can relate to, saying that I'm successful and why I'm doing it. So that is second A part of my input. And second B, I would say that the team needs visible anchors. A leader has to have anchors. The team needs visible anchors, because you need 5 mini leaders or 5 mini, wherever you are. In my language, I say 5 mini, HR heads who will breathe, walk, understand whatever, let's say, the organization or my vision or thought processes, so that they propagate it across. And that propagation makes pillars out of them, makes them visible anchors, so that people are able to relate. So I would say those would be the 2 or 3 defining thing, Raghu, in terms of building up a team and believing in the team. And of course, team has to believe in you. I also say this laughingly that a leader should always have a 95% respect, but also a 5% fear factor, because it's otherwise it becomes a problem. And it is not to say that you have to take out a gun or shoot them down or whatever, but it is a style which one has to develop, that if a leader is saying that this is an important thing to do by a certain deadline in a certain way, well, after some time you can you can have an argument, you can disagree, but that doesn't mean that that disagreement goes outside the room. You have to then align yourself in terms of whatever you have to do, and I think that's important for leaders and team members alike.
No, this is interesting as well. So, Pankaj, I mean, when you talk about alignment, right? Do you talk about alignment on the values, or and also alignment on the priorities that your business wants to deliver? So it goes hand in hand, is it?
I would say business, let's say, defines priorities of what you want to do, what number it can be, which area you want to do, etc. But the how part of it is, let's say, decided by the, I'm just saying, by the, let's say, by the HR team, because you have the entirety of the organization to be aligned towards the same thing. Also, the disagreement can be in terms of, oh, is it a steep goal which I can't achieve, or is it something which I do not want to do? Now, one is welcome to discuss that, one is welcome to figure that out. But if it's an organizational thought process, if it is an organizational, let's say, stake in the ground, then obviously one has to be clear that, it's an alignment which is required. And that's where I said that, you have a disagreement, you discuss it, have a point of view. But at the end of the day, then, somewhere we'll have to align ourselves with the fact that, listen, I want to become, let's say I'm saying I want to become a number one IT services provider. Now, obviously I'll have 1 year, 4 year, 8 year, 10 year, but nobody should be then coming in the way of saying that, listen, I don't think that this is the right thing, because I want something to be more prioritized than that. And that is where what I meant, that as a good leader, you make sure everybody is agreeing, but at the same time, if the people have a whatever concern or doubt, I think within the room everything okay, but outside, if you go, whatever is the stated purpose from a perspective of any function or this thing, I think we should then align ourselves towards it.
Absolutely, spot on. And I think it's and that's the way you can drive the business forward, right? When there is an alignment, and when you really use the beautiful words anchors. Your anchor
Right.
needs to carry. They are the legs in terms of taking your message,
You're right.
your vision
You're
forward
right.
as well. So, if I may, Pankaj, I want you to take a moment to a time machine where, is there a piece of advice you wish you would have received earlier in your career? Um, something you would now like to share with a younger version of yourself, or even a rising leader?
I guess the only thing I again, go through the anecdotal experiences which is there, right? Like somebody mentioned to me about a long time back, maybe in the first 5-10 years of my working career, that everything what you think about whatever an individual or about an interaction doesn't necessarily have to be spoken out loud, number one. Number two, even if you are not, let's say, in an interaction or in a group thing, if you believe that the other person's point of view is, let's say, not up to the mark or is very different, or it's making you feel uh, a little bit I don't know, stupid about the guy, if that is what I can say. You don't have to say that. And I now understand. I mean, like I said, came in the first 5 to 8 years of my working life, and then I realized that everything which I feel about a transaction or an individual or something doesn't have to be stated. See, sometimes you are in a position where you can get away with making a statement, but it is not that everybody understands that. Sometimes the words can be taken and interpreted very differently. So that's the reason I say this, that one should learn to have this capability as well as the ability. Both are different words. So where it is important to absorb, and more, I say that for HR people all the time, that there is an expectation that we will make the employees happy, or we'll make them whatever. It is not that. That is a organizational thing. It comes in with a lot of culture. It comes in with a lot of actions which people see. I think as an HR thing, one needs to be clear that you need to listen, absorb, and then decide what elements do you want to speak, both to the employee, to the employees' reportees, and to the employees' managers, because each one of them has different dimensions. So I would say that is what comes to my mind, Raghu.
Absolutely. And I think it's you mentioned two good words, right? The capability and as well as their ability to absorb and listen. And I know it's quite challenging as well being in an HR role, because you're not here to please everybody.
You're right.
You wanted to put certain fundamentals or elements within an environment where everyone can thrive, right? And that's a great piece of advice which I will take on board as well
Yeah.
personally. Uh, Again, I wanted to talk about, and again, your views around the trends, Pankaj. As the year winds down, there's a lot of conversation around the future of work, right? So I wanted to get your perspective in terms of what trends and what are the skill sets that you, or let's say, what are the top hiring trends and shifts you're seeing in the tech, and what advice you give to freshers entering into HR or IT space in 2025 and beyond.
I always say this. I mean, in my various, let's say, interactions, engagements to the students and the outside world, that hard work never goes out of fashion. And I think the reason I say this is that people outside, whether they are, and more importantly, freshers, since you asked them, I think it is important that they don't get carried away by the talk of what kind of what kind of I think they have to have a skill. uh, I always tell the freshers that the option to get hired is yours, but the option to hire is the person on the other side of the desk. They have to unfortunately get impressed. Now, I'm using the word unfortunate because they are the decision makers. So you have to bring something to the table which makes sense, not only to them, but also the thing which you believe in. So that is part number one. Uh, Part number two, I think it's important to, it's not about dreams, it's not about knowing what you don't know, etc. Both the ways. You don't know, you know doesn't make a difference. You can still talk about what I would like to do, etc. But it has to have some legs of its own. I mean, it cannot be such a bizarre thing that I come to an interview, let's say, and I face this all the time, right? I mean, if you meet a senior leader, the guy will say that, listen, give me an exciting role. I mean, I don't understand what you mean by an exciting role. I mean, even for a fresher, it's the same thing. The excitement has to be there. So there has to be some legs into that meaning when, one talks about it during the interactions. And now coming in terms of let's say the trends, I think two or three things. One, uh, we have been hearing about for the last almost, see, this AI, automation, machine learning has been there for the last decade. In fact, if you go back and look at 2008 to 2014, there will be references to artificial intelligence, machine learning, automation, etc., etc. Now there are different flavors to it. Even that time, I remember there were predictions that, oh, the workforce is going to disappear, everything is going to be, and I think sure, Raghu, you and me can relate to it. So many robotic, things which used to be there. But the fact is that they will only be able to look at a repetitive nature, which requires no human judgment. And when I look at our workforce engagement and the HR technology initiatives which we do, see, there is only that much you can come to from a technology. After that, there has to be a touch point, an engagement, right, in terms of understanding business, what happens from a business to a output on a project, and so on and so forth. So while we apply and deploy that, but there is a limitation, and I keep on reminding everybody that the workforce is, so if, and again I give as an example, if you remember sometime back in India, call center work was the most in thing to happen, right? Everybody used to get it because it was the least of the, the, let's say, the skilling which was required, because everybody gets skilled, as you enter a call center. But they have also not disappeared. Only thing is the work has become a little bit, higher, and the lower level of the repetition, the, the similar thing of doing certain, like, I mean, today we get a call from a bank saying that, dear Pankaj, if you are Pankaj, press 1. If you have done the transaction, press 2. So those are the things which will go away. Rest of the things definitely will not go away. Skilling is important. Multi-skilling is important. People outside, inside, whether, doesn't make a difference. You are selling yourself if you have to go outside there, and maybe if I put a word that, if you have to put $1 onto your skill, then you have to be sure that, this is what you have to do. So that is the second part. And the third thing is that if one looks at the workforce trending across in the last 1 year, and whatever the 3 years are saying, there is no change at all in the last, from the last 5 years. People are still saying learn skills,
Yeah.
multi-skill yourself. Only thing they are advising is that don't wait for a skill or a training to come to you. Maybe you want to decide yourself and figure out this, and for that there are helpful assessment, etc., which can be done. So I think that is where it would be. The tools, the platforms will definitely evolve, they will definitely become better, but I think the workforce should be looking forward to getting more and more different and exciting kind of opportunities. I think the biggest thing I would say is that in the 2.5, 3 decades or 1 decade, there was a standard set template as an expectation of the what I want in a role. I think what has happened, if I look at the, from my vantage now, I don't look at any specific pedigree, skill, etc., because now that the workforce outside is multi-talented, has diverse experiences. So we need to figure that out. And I think today it's not necessary for an engineer to do the coding and vice versa. It was earlier one of those things which happened, and I can give multiple examples, but I am sure you get the drift.
No, absolutely, Pankaj. I think this is clearly evident. If I had to summarize, is continuous learning and improvement
Yes, I
is
agree.
what is going to help the uh, freshers, especially, to get the right jobs, right? And finally, and I look, Pankaj, I've really enjoyed this interaction. There's so many gold mine that we already got it, but one final question: what kind of legacy do you hope to leave behind, both as a leader and as a person?
I need, I think, and I believe that I leave a legacy behind, that work gets executed at the same level, with the same perfection, with the same zeal and ambition as it was if I was around. And that is where I say that the leaders need to be clear that they have to build self-sustaining teams in terms of what they can do. Number two, I would be more than happy if if the reference comes that yes, this is something we learned from from Pankaj, not as an individual, but from Pankaj, because this is the context of that. And I would only say these two things, that you only live with that thought process. Uh, I always say that the litmus test is that how many people you have touched or worked in the past who want to work with you.
Yeah.
And well, I always say I'm blessed that I'm able to figure that out. I mean, if as I move organizations because of whatever reasons, personal, professional, I mean, I've been able to get the people, coalesced into a team, aggregated into a team based upon the past, the what is there. And I think that is again, like I said, a litmus test that how many people want to work with you as you move in your journey.
That's a very beautiful insight, Pankaj. And in fact, this conversation has been nothing short of insightful, to be honest.
Sure.
What
Thank you,
stood
Raghu.
out for me today was not just your experience, but your ability to turn your moments of challenge into leadership principles,
Mhm.
right? And your belief that your culture, empathy, and clarity are more than just words, right? They are competitive advantage. So thank you for your sharing your story, your wisdom, and your vision. And I know our listeners, whether they're aspiring professionals or, in fact, seasoned executives, they're walking away something with valuable today. Really appreciate Pankaj for taking your time and
Thank you.
to us. And I really wish you and, in fact, Coforge family a continued success uh, in building workplaces where people are not just don't show up; they really truly belong as well.
Sure. Thank you, Raghu. Thanks for reaching out. And it was lovely to talk to you. And like I said, I'll look forward to having you in my Bangalore office.
No, brilliant. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.